Hi, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday's Live. This week, we're going to be doing an Amalfi Coast Road scene. This particular spot is in Conca de Marini, which, fun place. I think if we give you some orientation as to where it is. This map here, the nearby city is Agerola, and it's here. That's Vesuvius, and Pompeii is right here. So it's a little bit southeast. Of Pompeii. Beautiful place. The drive on these things, this photo is taken through the window of a vehicle, which is not my usual way of gathering references. But that road, perhaps you can see, this is the how close we were to the edge of it. And here's Amalfi proper. You can see it's a narrow road. There's not much there. By American standards, it's not quite enough for two vehicles, but they get two vehicles and motorcycles and scooters down the middle. So it was quite an exciting ride. But the task today will be to deal with perspective by looking at something from above. Hi, Carol. Carol was in the vehicle. She knows what what a hair-raising ride it was. And looking down, but then also dealing with the fact that the buildings are not squared up perpendicular or relatively parallel to us. There's curvature, everything's kind of on different planes. So here's my sketchbook version of it. I'm going to do some simplifications, but the whole thing with the perspective is to try and figure out, when you're looking down, what's eye level is probably going to be near the top of the picture. This building up here is about level with us, where we're at on the road. These we're seeing progressively more and more of the top of the building. So anything that's eye level is going to be basically a straight line like that. A little below eye level, you're going to see some more. And then here comes our perspective. As you look down, it'll become wider, such as maybe these or these. So it's just as you go back in space, make them narrower, just like the railroad track ties. And then we have to figure out, if they're not oriented to us on a straight line like that, what if they're curved, such as these? Well, the easiest thing to do is just figure out, hi, Becky. Just figure out which way the leading edge is. And the leading edge of the building, if it's on this curve like this, it's going to follow a radial pattern, whereas they go back in space, they'll get shorter, narrower, a little wider still. So, other thing we have to account for is also that anything that's, even if it's on a curve like this, there's still going to be this narrowing towards the back. So it's going to be maybe more like a curve like that. So a building within here, if the roof line is like that, it has to go narrower. And what we see on one side will not be as prominent as what we see on the other side. Not so much the case if the center of the building is here. You'll see a little more of both sides. Verticals will always be vertical, unless the thing is tumbling over. If there's a porch coming out, it too will have to stay on this curve like that. So the easy way, hi Diane, is just go ahead and if you can't really see the thing as well as you'd like, then just go ahead and hold your pencils. Get 2 pencils or 2 brush handles or something, and let me get 2. And then just hold them to the line of the roof. See if there's any kind of, how much that is. Hold it to the front end there. That one's like so. That one's like so. This one's like so. So they're almost like the face of a clock. So the other thing we have to deal with when we're drawing a thing like this is where are things going to go? Well, we don't have, our horizon, as it were, is very close to the top, and I like to have a dead straight line, so I am going to use just something with a straight edge to help me out on that. I'll just do it lightly because I want a soft edge, because it's very distant. Let's see. Then, I'm going to say it starts at about 1/5, comes out to about 1/4. So just find that big shape. Look for a big shape. We've got a, trace it with your hand. Even something like that will help. So I'm going to loosely So now I know where this goes. Now I can refine this. That's that little gorgeous little tree, which is about 1/3 of the way down. 1, 2, that's about here. Now I can start refining that. Then I've got a tree up here, which comes at nearly the middle. It's a larger tree. Then I've got this building up here, which is take them to be tissue boxes or cereal boxes or whatever they appear to be before they have that characteristic structure that it has. Now, straight away you can see I've made a mistake. That needs to be crossing the horizon line. So all this needs to come here. This comes across here. That's where the tree is now. The big trees. Helps me come down here. The little one. Now I've got this lovely little stair-step set of things coming out of the woodwork there. We can erase later. Always get the right line in before. Hi, Jane. Always get the right line in before you get you start erasing the bad one. It comes to about where this ends here, and it comes about to the bottom of that little tree. So I use the one thing to find the other thing. And that's a relational drawing. Learn to talk, John. Spatially, we're looking for relationships. Because if we just go at it blindly, we will tend to draw everything the same size and kind of in the same general orientation. It's a human thing. We just do that. Okay, so I've got some right lines in there, and I've got some wrong lines. I've taken out my wrongs. Okay. We're nearly done, aren't we? Okay, this helps me find these, and that little guy helps me find this. Starts above that and ends below it. So if you can see a shape, I see sort of like 3 rectangles. It falls within some rectangles, and then I'm going to refine those. So I've got a small roof, a porch, some assorted buildings. When you squint, look for the things that stick out. Some things will remain and some things will disappear. Those are the things you need to find. First, I thought that was a swimming pool, but it's not. It's some kind of very fancy deck. I have no idea who lives in these places. They probably work in Agirola or are wealthy retirees or something. Catherine, hello. Okay, now that little thing I just drew right here, that is a rock outcropping where we hit the ocean, but it also helps me find this roof. The reddish one that disappears behind the green. So I'm going to look for, well, there's an L shape. Need to start back a little further, I think. Yeah. And this disappears into the trees. Now there's little incidental lights and things in there which you can easily accomplish by lifting or using white gouache, which I have no compunctions against for a thing like this, as long as I'm making a positive mark with it and not trying to correct a boo-boo. I don't want to spoil like those little lights there where the water is breaking up as it hits the rocks. I don't want to spoil the beauty of this wash as I transition from a gray, blue, violet to a teal to an emerald almost by trying to paint around little things like that. So that's where I would go in and use my gouache. So having found some lines that I like, I'll take out the ones that I don't like. Okay, I'm down here now. And I've got like some sort of patio coming out. On what appears to be a very sheer, it might even be a building. But then we've got this one down here. That's kind of our star of our show. And these are going to show up when we paint them, if that makes sense. It's putting the darks around the light shapes that make things appear. One of the other things that I'm going to do is I'm not going to have too much action with little boats. I don't want it to be too spotty. I might have a nice one over here. I've got a lot of light spots in dark areas, and I don't want to have too many. I'm going to roughly indicate my tree line here. Yeah. Okay. And as I darken these lines up, okay, switch to a sharper pencil. This guy. The center line runs so. It's a double roof. I see nearly equal sizes. The thing I need to catch is that it's a little wider at one end than it is at the other. And there is a triangle to the front with that. That comes down. There's a porch or walkway. Imagine having coffee out there in the morning. My goodness. Some people live like this. Boom, boom, boom. And then there's appears to be a walkway down to a little marina type thing. Most of that's going to wind up in shadow, so. Okay, we've got a protruding out from here. Yep, it's going in a slant. See, I wanted to draw it like that, but it's not like that, is it? So I have to draw. Always check what you see versus what you think you know. Now the rock face comes in here. I've got that comes down, out, out, and down. There appears to be a little chapel down there. which is so Italian. Yeah, just wonderfully. Then we've got this, I have no idea what it is, some sort of lean-to with some lovely shade underneath. And then over here is a who knows what. We're just looking for shapes. Things are obscure in a cast shadow in the water there, so we're going to go with that. And then there's a bit of a beach or a place to moor boats. Might put one boat here. I don't want to get too crazy with boats. Maybe I'll put another one over here. I want to keep them close to the and I like this bit of rock and greenery, which creates this thing is curving and cascading toward the lower right. And this sort of keeps it from becoming, it stops that trajectory. Windows I'm going to make happen after I've got the whole of the building painted. Okay, I think we've got enough to play around with here. Ooh, yeah, look at that. It should be. Architectural detail like windows and things I think is best to keep more of it towards the buildings that are closer to us, and fewer and fewer. No, this was not our view. This was our view zipping along. Jan's question, zipping along at, my gosh, breakneck speeds, going through little right angle turns and tunnels. And sometimes there were mirrors so that the drivers could see what was going on ahead of them, sometimes not. And people on scooters would just be zooming down the middle between the vehicles going both ways. How nobody gets killed, I don't know. I guess they do, according to the driver. Occasionally that happens. So, you didn't need coffee when you were driving on this. It was hair-raising enough to be light caffeine. So, we're going to need to execute, I think, the water first. Typically we go lights to darks. So I'm going to get a mop brush and a smaller mop brush, and I'm going to possibly use the spray to keep things wet as I'm bringing that wash down. I'm going to have to change the color quite a bit as I come down. It has to get darker, and it has to change from a grayer blue to a more vibrant blue, and then from a blue-violet to a blue-green. And I'm throwing the kitchen sink of colors out here. I'm going to have some Viridian, which I don't believe I've used that just yet in our demonstrations. So lights to darks. So I've got another color on here called, it's the French Naples Yellow. It'll look probably a little too dark for the moment, but I'm going to put these in. I'm going to put a little orange in it as well to get a bit different. I'm also going to get some very pale lavender to do the equivalent of white stucco in shadow, which I'm going to need a slightly darker version of that for up here. This I'm going to leave just a bit off. You notice I'm hitting more than what is there because the darks of the greens are going to compensate nicely. We won't have to worry about that. Front of this, that's going to be a little bit darker too. Maybe I'll put some raw umber in it. I really had to expand my list of colors when I began painting these Italian things. They're just so much more color-wise. I had to get the viridian out. I'm thinking I'm going to get a little bit of maybe some yellow ochre to warm that up or make it more the color of the walkway down here or the beach or whatever it is. I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna in that just so it's a different character so that the concrete and the that's in shadow. It's white, but it's in shadow. This is yellowish white, but it's in shadow, and we'll probably have to hit that darker later. Would surprise me. This is a little yellower. Might even get some flat out yellow. I'll get down, I don't mind if it gets down into there because darks will cover it up. It's a little lighter on its front side, so just add some water to that. And also that area in there. Let's put some orange in that and some burnt sienna. Yeah, let's get some red. Red-orange to get that terracotta, and maybe a little bit of this to take that down. So these can be drying while I'm executing the Turanian Sea over there. That plus some water for this area. There are some colorful areas in there. This roof. Ah, that roof. Slightly dirtier version of this orange, so some burnt umber, maybe a little lavender. Michael. Oh yeah, the light. Well, I think it's one sun. We're under the same sun. But we are at a different latitude. That makes a difference. And the other thing is having so much water surrounding. I think bounces it a bit, and creates some reflections that we would not typically see, say, here. But it was striking. And more will happen. Oh, let's see, I need to get in there with something grayish. So I used the lavender because even though it looks lavender, it does function as kind of a gray. When you mix it with other colors. So, golly, yeah, let's get something there, in here. Oh, this is lots of stuff is going to get darker in here. And if it looks over dark now, don't worry. When we start putting real darks around it, it's going to look quite a bit lighter. So, let me mop up some of that, because I need room for my sea colors. Oops. Now, gonna need a very dull greenish. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow ochre. These are very pale mixes, lots of water. Maybe a little bit of that green. And some lavender. Kitchen sink greenish blue. Whoop, right across there. Let's make it more lavenderish. I need it to be kind of nondescript, and I don't mind if I get down into these trees because they're going to be darker. Now, I'm going to let that edge sit and soften while I mix these other colors up. Ultramarine blue, lavender, a little bit of raw umber. I don't want it to be as zippy as it's far more vibrant color down here. As I get into this area, I'm going to start getting some cerulean and turquoise to go greener. And again, a little bit of raw umber so that it's not quite as vibrant as what's going to come later. I hope I'm mixing enough. Now, right, I've mixed that, I've painted that, I'm down here. I need turquoise, maybe a bit of Prussian. Getting a little darker and a little more vibrant and perhaps a little bit of this viridian. I squeeze your viridian out, if it's true viridian and not phthalo green, which you could probably use here too. Squeeze it out fresh before you use it because it dries very hard and you just can't work it up to what you're going to need. Okay. Now over here, this is where it really needs to get green. And not even a bluish green like that, it starts to get slightly more olive green. I guess you can't see these, can you? Ah, there we go. Can you see the progression there? And I'm just going to start throwing a little bit of yellow ochre into that, and maybe even a bit of alizarin in one corner. But I may need to put that in. Yeah, okay. That's going to need to go in by itself. And when I get down here, I'm going to have to dip into something else to do a wet and wet mix. So, deep breath. This could go south. This could go south. I could screw this up. But you have to plan, set your, get your mixes all ready to go, and just adopt the attitude that you confidently swim in the fail zone. You know that you could screw up, but have a plan, and then that's the strategy, and then as you paint, adjust accordingly. That's the tactical part. So, starting with the lavender-ish, which I know I didn't make enough of, probably. Good. It's a little bit darker than the house. Try to keep a bead. If you can't, you may need to. Don't worry about the shoreline. You can make darks. You can use... Now, we're switching to this. Trees are darker if you go over it. If you overshoot, it's all right. Keep the bead. Don't starve the bead. Getting a little greener. We're into the teal zone. Maybe even insert a bit of that up there while it's still wet. I don't care about that little tree. I'll lose it. Start getting into these greens. Notice I'm tending to start the next color a little bit above where I might want it. That's because the board is at a 45-degree angle and it's shearing down, so hopefully it will wind up where I want it. Or somewhere pretty close. But as long as we get a transition of color and value, we'll be good. And I can see already, I'm going to start needing to put some raw umber in there to get closer to the appearance of what's going on. So I'm going to start working into my Viridian. And of course, I didn't mix enough. John. Yellow ochre. Maybe it's raw sienna. I don't know. This is where I have to start coming in to deepen it up with some ultramarine or some cobalt. And that, and something to make it a little bit weirder green. Yep, that's what we're looking for. That's what I wanted. I'm going to put that stuff in there now. Oh, there's my boat. Well, the boat's smaller now. Turquoise. There's so many colors going on in this crazy. The water here was just off the charts amazing to look at it. Now, in this corner, it gets shallower. So I have some white standing by that I'm going to mix to get a very minty, soft, yellowish color that I hope will, yeah, good, it'll look like shallows. Yes, and we need to dry this. So there we are. Maybe not. Now, I was using very creamy paint going into a very wet surface there. If you took runny paint and mixed it in there, it could have been a disaster. So, cover your ears. We're going to... Okay. Now, we're going to try to make these buildings appear a little more like they are by cutting in with the greens around the shape. So we'll be wanting to be a bit more precise, perhaps a stiffer brush, something like the Oriental brush, which is roughly the same size, but a little bit stiffer in here because, we just need to do that. Now, out of these greens, we're going to mix some new ones. I'm just going to use this puddle and this puddle. I'm not kidding. And start modifying it. Prussian and this Nicolazzo yellow. Now you can, boy, this is a very vibrant green. It's a little too vibrant, so probably I should be getting into my yellow ochre, which is very dirty at this point. And I need a cooler mix for the background. So I'm going to work out of the one with that had the turquoise, and I'm going to get some more. I'll put a little lavender in it too in one corner because I need the background trees, bright as they are, to be a little bit less vibrant than the closer ones. And then I'm going to work some raw umber into both mixes. And then these are not the darkest greens that will be going in. These are the greens that are basically illuminated. And I will modify one corner of the puddle. I don't mix it right in the middle, mix off to the side to get your variance. Start up on the top, more wrong, yellow, gray it down. And I'm even going to spray this now to kind of lubricate the sheet. I'm going to use the buildings as almost as stopping points so that I can execute one area and have a fudge area. Now let's get some indigo into a corner, or a dark blue. Okay. Let's get the yellower mix. I'm coming a little closer to us. Now I want to start cutting around my buildings with a bit of care. I lose something, I can get it back. Don't be afraid. I'm going to go for a more olivey mix. I'm coming forward. See, these are stopping points. I can execute this part. Oops. I can execute that separately. I can execute that separately. So I've got stopping points between buildings, and that helps me. I always look for those places. Now, up here, I'm going to get into the Prussian or the indigo and some red to make a deep, rich, purplish green. I'll just get in dioxazine purple. I had to get 1,000 different colors. While this surface is still moist, I'm going to get these shaded areas around the buildings, under the trees and around the buildings, to get a soft but somewhat distinct edge. This is where I probably should have started with that, because it's drier up there, right? And I'm being, these are dark colors. I'm not, This isn't a wishy-washy watercolor. They're going for the darks. Keep these shapes, these shadow shapes in the trees, smaller as they're further back and smaller as they're at the top of the tree. Okay, now getting into the yellower, greener mixes. The ones that are closer to us here. I wish this thing went out. Well, maybe I'll. Here we go. Is that better? Yeah, okay. Let's get a little of this in there too, because that's so that there's a shift in the character of the greens closer to and further away. Now here I've got to be careful on the backside of my building. I'm going to start poking in some zippier yellows along with the Viridian and a little water, because this is non-moving paint. Slow, non-moving paint. And again, I will be going in with my darker colors while this is damp. I'm going to stop in the vicinity. I'm going to put some very yellowish stuff near here. I need to spritz that, don't I, to lubricate it. Staying farther back, I'm not hosing it down up close. It's just like the perfume thing, where they talk about spray it in the air and then walk under it. That was something interesting I learned at the DR Museum when we were in France. Apparently, Coco Chanel said that you put the perfume on your skin and it just sort of dissipates. What you need to do, she said, is spray it on your clothing, which makes sense. So, that's getting a little bit too zippy. I'm going to put some yellow ochre in the mix. I'm over here now. And I'm stopping at what is going to be where I get into the rock face. My green needs to come here, 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 and into there, doesn't it? Oh my goodness. Now, back into that mix of either Prussian and a red to get a deep, well, I was using, what am I using? Yeah, I was using the dioxazine purple too. Turn it around. You may have to spritz this again, we'll see. Starting up here where it was I'm looking for big shapes. A little lighter, a little greener in here. This area, it was almost like looked like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon or something. It was really. Okay, now this is where it's really going to get scary, where I'm afraid of botching it. Because I want to work into this rock face with a dark red, violet, gray, so lavender, raw umber, some red, and some water. Because this I want to be just a tad bit redder or browner and a tad bit lighter than what I've previously done. Yep. And I want that edge to melt into it. And just as I used, so that the greens almost kind of disappear into it, I'm going to modify it as I go by making it browner in some places with the raw umber and bluer in other places. Shouldn't be any white sparkles where the green hits where the foliage hits the rock. That needs to be in shadow everywhere. And just as we went into the greens with a dark violet sort of color, we'll be going into this with some darks to get the deep shade areas. Raw umber. So this is runnier. It would move when I tip it, but kind of slow. I'm actually going to start in on some of my shadows down there. Now, back into that Prussian cad red mixture. Oops, that's indigo. Well, almost the same thing. A bluish red. Prussian blue and cad red was a classic mix that Winslow Homer used in both his oils and his watercolors. And it's very, very good for this sort of thing. So I'm trying to indicate some like striations. Maybe I went in a little too early, too wet. We'll see what we get. Yeah, I'm gonna let it wait a bit. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna execute the foliage over here, which I want to be the most vibrant of the greens. Rinse, blot, back up into here. I may require some transitional colors in the greens, but you want to get the big shapes first. All right. Whoop, too red. So let's get some, and a little bit of water or moisture. There we go. That needs to be a little darker than that. It's too light. Let's get some raw umber. Leave some light spots on it. That's better. Lavender and raw umber into that green, and I'm going to make some transitional greens, which turn the corner from the darks to the lighter areas of the green. Like that, get into my rich purples here. That, need to spritz that. Lubricate that surface. transitional greens. You're looking almost straight down on that. That's how close to the edge of the road we were. It was crazy. It's hard to explain just how nutsoid it was. Now we're going to start, this is where the fun begins. This is where we make the thing kind of become what it is. And if this in here is too dark anywhere, don't worry about that, because you can lift. When the paint is that thick, it lifts wonderfully. You can really lift back to something useful or desirable. I've got just a little bit more foliage on parts of this. Let's just get some zippy greens and get that. Close greens. Now there are some greens that are tucked in around these. Stuff was growing everywhere. It's a very fecund country. All right. Now, back to these blue-brown combinations for darks. We've got some bluish stuff here. I've got some bluish stuff here. I'm going to put some burn umber in it. And I'm going to make one that's a little browner. I think maybe I'll go to a smaller brush because I'm going to be working in a smaller area, so that only makes sense, correct? Going to get these areas here. Ooh, need more water. These are the beach areas. And the rocky outcroppings. White, slightly warmer and lighter. The darker bluer one I'm going to use for this sheer wall. Okay, now a little darker version. Whoa, 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 whoa. Look, overshot that one. Let's get some. That's too dark. What I want to execute now is some of these shadows. So pretty dark. And then I'm going to adjust the color. Well, let's get a little redder. And a little waterier. I will adjust the color on the sides of the buildings. This shadow goes out into the water and becomes part of the water. So I'm going to have to put some turquoise at its edge. Dip into some brown to make the edge there. I need, let's see, that plus a lot of water. And it probably sounds odd, but a little bit of grayish green over that yellow. And just let it meet that dark and melt into it. I'm going to cast a shadow across part of that thing. There is a shadow cast across part of this thing. And then some shadows caused by we don't know what out here. Shadow there. I think I'm going to need that here. I'm going to work my way back. Going to need the darker stuff in here. I can see that now. Yep, the whole thing really. Back in here, I can start playing with that. Okay, these reddish purplish darks. Oh golly, we got a problem here. Have to restate that because there's something leaked into it, which will happen. You have to be able to say, things are going to go wrong and I'll be able to fix them. And that's almost more important, just being fearless like that. If I can get to teach you that, that'll be a valuable thing. Don't be afraid of it. Working our way back. Shadows under eaves. One side of a roof having a little more shade than the other. Suggestions of windows. Or doors. Being mindful of where I was a minute or so ago, so that I don't stab into something that needs to be, it's too wet for the moment. So here. Steps. Okay. Now, that is too light. A bit of turquoise, a bit of this stuff. It needs to be darker than its surroundings. Some of these too, but not quite that dark. Remember how they looked almost too dark at first, and now they're too light. Now this, I think I can cast a shadow from there onto that rooftop. Let's see. While I'm waiting for things in this vicinity to dry, oh wait, let's straighten that out. There was some sort of building or scaffolding or, oh, I'll bet it's, what do you call it, like a balcony. While I'm waiting for that stuff in there to dry enough that I can put little details on it, I'm going to get the white out. And we're closing in on this guy. And we're going to start making little dabs and doodads and fun things to make it happen. Dipping right into the nozzle with a pointy brush. If you miss something, you need to recover it. You can do that. You need to add something. I'm going to put some water that's breaking on the rocks. When you put it on this thick as a positive mark, it dries to the same reflective index as regular. No way I was going to paint around that. Let's put some lapping water here. I like little sparkles. Keep that to the front. Where else can we do things like this? Don't go crazy. I'm using a light pressure on the brush and picking up the tooth of the paper. Okay, let's straighten out our buildings. Some patios. But again, I'm wanting to keep all this action more towards the front. I'm actually going to mix some of this white with some of this green to get a minty green. To make a transitional color there. Again, this is the kind of color that if I just used green and put a lot of water with it, it would look anemic. And then I'm going to also mix a grayish bluish by putting that into this and use that for some eave shadows. Maybe some lines on something like that. And shadows. Crusty rocks. That will be just about the right stuff for indicating some windows back here. And this is where I'd want to stop and study it and see what I've created. So let's peel and see what we get. That needed to go in the shadow. So, tape off. Stick that up where it can actually be in the frame. And there we go. Yeah, so I can see I need to be a little bit bolder with the deep shadow. Get some yellow ochre, some orange. With that, to deepen that, we could use that elsewhere too, to differentiate some of these things. That roof, yeah, it's a lovely tile roof. Okay, now I also see it might be nice, a lot of water, some of these nondescript blues, maybe even some lavender and a lot of water, and introduce some a little more variance in these areas here. Make the water look as though it's kind of disturbed. A lot more water. And then further back. A little bit of turquoise in the front, a little bit of that there. Indicates some reflective light and color from the water. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that and study it till if I see something that I want or need. Closer to me, some of this stuff might be more apparent. I'll do that. And that's it. So then to wrap up, just remember that if things are on a curve, make sure that the curve goes like that, just as it would if it were something not on a curve. And use that as your line. Then make sure that your railroad tracks go through the curve too, and that things verticals will stay vertical. That's good. Something farther away might be, when you're looking down, may be at eye level, and stuff in the bottom of the picture could be below eye level. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you for tuning in. I know it was a bit longer than usual, but and if you ever get a chance to take one of Cecile's tours or go to Italy or France and see these wonderful places, by all means do it. So, thanks for tuning in. See you guys later. Bye-bye.